Shuhei Yoshida by himself is really demonstrating just how ignorant and out of touch Sony's executives actually are. Because that guy keeps releasing interviews saying all these really wild things that I would have been able to see right through. Like, oh, I was shocked by how poorly Horizon Forgotten West did. Like, meanwhile, I was sitting here in 2017 telling people that, yeah, Horizon Mini Yawns sales are completely fake. The IP is AstroTurf. It's not anywhere near on the same level of relevancy as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I was sitting here with my giant dick telling you that Sony had no idea what they were doing. And I was completely vindicated. Everything they've done then, from putting their games on PC to scrapping Sony PlayStation Studios, to refusing to put out anything that isn't a AAA movie game, right? Sony has been on going downhill for a very, very long time. Everything that people actually genuinely liked about them has slowly eroded away and become a complete joke. And plenty of people are aware of this and will acknowledge it and will admit it and have moved over to Switch or PC. But there are a lot of people that are in denial that Sony had every advantage in the world going up against the industry leader Nintendo and have completely failed. And it's interesting to me that Shuhei Yoshida is spending his retirement years giving interviews, coping and seething about a huge number of Sony's attempts at keeping themselves relevant. You know, I've seen him talk about, like, the 3DS price cut. I've seen him talk about, like, the Horizon Zero Dawn IP, you know, like, he's given a lot of really interesting, like, insights as to, like, his mindset and how things are done at Sony, but, like, one of the most insane delusional takes I've seen from him personally, I'm sure there are others, but, like, this is, like, my general opinion, his take that Nier Automata saved the Japanese gaming industry. Let me repeat that. Nier Automata saved the Japanese gaming industry. Platinum went big. It couldn't even save Platinum. Okay? Like, let's think about this for a second. Nier Automata, a game that people worshipped, that people tried to make out to be some huge, major, like, thing, you know, like a return to form from Japanese developers, you know, like people tried to say it had some super deep, complex story. It doesn't. That it had some amazing action RPG gameplay. It does not. That it had, like, a particularly attractive female lead. It does not. Like, you know, Nier Automata, to me, is an example of everything wrong with the PlayStation community, in which they propped up a game that was clearly inferior to games like the original Bayonetta, the Wonderful 101, Astral Chain that would come out a couple years later, right? Like, Nier Automata is nothing special. And keep in mind, I'm saying this as someone who has played it, who does own it on Switch. I have no desire to play through the game over and over again to get all the endings right. Like, Nier Automata is not a very good video game. And yet, this alongside, like, Persona 5 and Yakuza 0, like, these were the last wave of, like, of major PlayStation exclusive titles that were supposed to destroy Nintendo, right? This was the last time that PlayStation could pretend that they controlled the Japanese gaming industry, right? In the real world, Nintendo released Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and the Nintendo Switch, and that's what became bigger than everything else in the industry, right? It became bigger than Witcher 3, than Elden Ring, than Baldur's Gate 3, than Skyrim, right? Nintendo's been able to innovate on those on their games and produce sequels and constantly keep things feeling fresh, right? Like, meanwhile, like, CD Projekt Red is like bleeding money because of how much of a disaster Cyberpunk 2077 was, and Platinum is going out of business, right? You know, the narrative that Nier Automata was some masterpiece was pretty blatantly an attempt at trying to keep up this illusion that the PlayStation 4 was some monumental thing for Japanese developers, right? Like, this was a return to form for the Japanese gaming industry. And it just wasn't. Like, the real Japanese developers never really left Nintendo hardware. You know, everyone else was coping and seething and like trying to westernize around that time. You know, Square, Capcom, Konami, like all these companies were like bending over backwards trying to like keep players on PlayStation instead of like discovering the superiority of Nintendo consoles. And games like Nier Automata were the last wave of that being possible, right? Which is why I think like Shuhei is so adamant that like this saved Japanese gaming, because like it's the last time that anybody talked about Sony positively, right? There were a handful of attempts at like trying to gaslight people into thinking their games were great. Games like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, Cyberpunk 2077, just to name a few. But like they never had the same genuine fan enthusiasm that Yakuza 0 or Nier Automata had, right? Like this has nothing to do with like the games being good or like people liking the games or how much they've sold. Like this was the last time that games like this could come out and would not receive any critical backlash whatsoever, right? When Nier Automata came out, like there was a very real push to promote Yoko Taro as one of the greatest minds in gaming when he hasn't produced anything of value before or since, right? Like, what has he done, right? In a lot of ways, like Hideki Kamiya has kind of gone down the same path, right? But like, this idea that Nier Automata was some huge deal is nothing but a cope, right? Like, it's not a game that stood the test of time. It's not a game that should have gotten any attention at all. It really was, at its core, just a fad, right? Like, people bought the game and played it because they didn't have anything else to play on their PS4s. There is nothing more to its success than that.